So just a little point of view from my perspective now. All right, that's done. What's going on, everyone? This video is going to be twofold. I want to give some insight onto the last 3 or 6 months. There's been a lot of change that I've gone through with this job, which obviously has affected some content, but we're back on a roll now. Wanted to give you a little bit of an update on that, but also fill you in on what everyday life as a detective is like. All right, I'm going to warn you now. I'm going to warn you right now, this video is going to be long. I think it's over 30 minutes. So check the description below and I'll have an index in there for different portions of the video. So first things first, past 6 months, a little bit has changed. I'm out of the patrol division, not a supervisor on the street anymore. I am now a commander of the detective bureau at my agency, and this is my office. With that being said, we're back on a roll. I'll have some regular content coming out. I know in the last video I mentioned it, but guys, I've got a ton of good companies I've been in contact with, and I'm really excited to push some of this stuff out to you. So definitely stay tuned. Have that Glock 48 that I posted on Instagram the other day and Facebook. Working really well with Galls right now. Hooked up with the Leviathan tribe, so they have a lot of good contact with companies, and I've got a lot of stuff coming up, including an AR build as well. So that'll be fun to kind of go through and show you guys. The second part of the video, what is a detective? Now, I will not be able to cover everything. Just like the SWAT team, it would take way too long to give you every single nitty-gritty detail that a detective encounters, that a detective goes through on a day-to-day basis. But I want to give you somewhat of an overview because there's a lot of questions in my inboxes about this new gig, what detectives do, you know, what's a day-to-day like in the bureau. So what would an overview of a detective be if I didn't give you a quick tour of the office? So right now you guys are on my Ronin S, the DJI Ronin S, which I love. So let me swing you guys around, just kind of show you the new digs. And there we have it. That was quick. Now I'll show you more here later in the video. All right, like I said, it'd be impossible really to define everyday life of a detective. Right now too, I can't even seem all that exciting. I'm not actually a detective. That was, you know, I did that for 8 or 9 years before I got promoted. I'm just the supervisor of our detective division now. So I'm kind of doing more of an administrative role. Obviously on critical incidents or larger cases, I'd be out there with the other detectives, but right now it's more of an administrative role, which admittedly is not as fun as my patrol job. But the good news is I also have community services unit, so my plan is hopefully here as soon as I get more of my footing on the ground, so to speak, I'll be doing more specialized activity, more community policing in a patrol context. So getting out, meeting people, things like that with the community services unit. So that'll definitely be more up my alley. Okay, I keep getting off track. Back to being a detective. So it's one of the more popular questions I get in my inbox, and the best way I can describe it is there is no description. A lot of people think or associate detectives as, okay, they only do the high-level criminal investigation. And while that might be mostly true, those are mostly the cases that you get, the best way to really define a detective or investigator is time. Detectives aren't all that different than police officers. I mean, they have some more advanced training mostly across the board, but they just have more time to investigate the case. So a lot of people know, you know, when a patrol officer knocks on the door, no, he isn't here, whatever. People lie to you all the time. You still get that as a detective, but there's this sense of when a suit and tie is knocking on the door that things might be a little bit more serious, or at least that guy is going to put more time into this investigation than a patrol unit would be able to. So patrol units or patrol divisions are typically the backbone of police departments, and I like to consider them the most important asset of a police department. That's where all your information comes in, all the proactivity. But the detective division or investigators are a support role that have more time to investigate an incident. You have to look at surveillance, you have to go through phone records, a lot of forensic recovery and whatnot. So let's get back to day to day. So when I first came to the Detective Bureau, I don't know, 9-10 years ago, I had this vision that you're always out canvassing neighborhoods, doing forensic evidence recovery, all this fun stuff that you see on TV. And really, there are days that I'm stuck right here behind my desk typing, doing administrative tasks, but there are days that you're out there in the field dealing with dead bodies, homicides, stabbings, shootings, things like that. So it really can vary. You can have a very boring day or a very action-packed, critical thinking, boots on the ground, talking to people, interviewing. You can have that type of a day too. It just depends what things come through the front door of your police department. So what is my day like? What I had to get adjusted to is I was on third shift, both when I moved from patrol to the Detective Bureau and when I moved from patrol to the Detective Bureau as the commander of this unit. So what I had to get used to is my day-to-day is getting up around 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes there's a run, sometimes there's a workout, sometimes there's not, and then coming straight into work. Sometimes I have childcare in there. Basically, back to my time video that I put out a while ago, you have all your normal human everyday life prior to going into work, no matter what you do, whether you're on patrol or in the detective division. It's not like anything changes drastically just because you're assigned a different role. So when I get into work, I have banker's hours now. So I'm like a either 8 to 4 or 9 to 5 schedule. So I come in. What I normally do is what's called a daily report. So all of the crimes that occur that our officers responded to the day before, or if it's a Monday, the weekend before, I go through each and every crime. And you look at it, you dive into the reports, and you find out, are there leads, are there investigative things that exist within those incident reports that a detective could latch onto and investigate. So for instance, if you get a crime of, say, a criminal damaging, somebody's back door was broken and somebody was trying to get inside, but there's no surveillance, there's no leads, there's no forensic evidence. A lot of times that will go back to the officer to further investigate. So if leads come in, the officer can kind of take the reins of that. But say you have that same incident and somebody maybe got into the house and cut themselves on the door frame and there's blood on the ground, or they assaulted somebody inside, or it turned into a robbery or whatever. There's investigative leads. There's things that you could latch onto, that blood, surveillance video, somebody ID'd somebody at the scene. I would take that out of the criminal incidents and I would assign that to one of my detectives. So that is part of the daily report. So that's kind of the first thing that I do. Now, a detective, they don't have the daily report. My detectives come in and they just immediately start working their caseload. So I'm going to try to blend a little bit about what I do and also what the detectives do. So the rest of my day is mostly administrative. So to give you an example of what I do after I get that daily report done versus maybe what some of my detectives do, my board. So that's full of things that I have to do administratively. So I'll kind of cut my responsibilities right there, because trust me, if you haven't turned this off already, you will definitely turn it off if I explain those things any further. They are really boring duties, administrative, budget type stuff. But for my detectives, they are really good at what they do. So they get cases. So just like I explained out of that daily report, they would get a case. And it used to come in like manila folders and everything. So you would get a case with, I'll just show you. Hang on a minute. All right, back in business. So what you used to get is once that daily report was gone through and you were assigned a case, you got one of these suckers. So if this landed on your desk, you were like always depressed because you got more work on your desk. But it would usually include like the officer's report, and you'd read it and see what evidence is in there. Did they recover fingerprints, footprints, whatever, and you start working your leads. And the great thing about being a detective is you're not really told what to do. In the patrol division, you're told to go to a call, There's procedurally ways to react to that call or things you have to do on the call. When you're a detective, it's really the ball's in your court, so you can work that case however you want to. So they get the case assigned, they look it over, and then they decide how they want to attack that case first. And 9 times out of 10, what that entails is talking to the victim. Even if patrol officers have already talked to that victim, they usually talk to the victim again and try to get more details than were available at the time of the report. Now after that, it's really hard for me to summarize what they would do on a case. Typically, the cases that get assigned have investigative leads, so sometimes those are spelled out in the report. If there's blood recovered at the scene, well, there's a lead. You can send it to your lab to do a DNA analysis. If there's a footprint, you can measure the footprint, forensically have that analyzed and find out exactly what shoe size it was and whatnot. So there's things that if certain evidence is present, you can work right away. Sometimes the case is so serious, like say a homicide or a attempted homicide, felonious assault, that you get the case, but there's still no leads. So the severity level's up here. And even though there's no leads, and typically something with no leads wouldn't be assigned to a detective to work, the case is so severe that they'll still work that case. So sometimes we used to get these case files and there'd be nothing in it. It's truly a whodunit. And you'd have to go out, pound the pavement, canvas, and go find a witness, go find somebody to flip on the suspect so you can start building your case. I keep saying we used to use these, and I only say that because now everything is digital. So now when these guys get case files, it's all on the computer, so they can just jump into that drive and actually look at everything on their screen that they have available to them. So we talked a little bit about how they'd start the investigation, and again, this video, I will really try not to make this 10 hours long, because I seriously could talk about this for 10 hours, but I'm really summarizing here. So that's how they would start their investigation. Obviously, if they found leads, they'd work those leads. And then they present it to prosecutors for charges. So luckily at our agency, we're a little bit larger size agency. We have to present charges to the prosecutor. They're usually available for search warrants. They're usually available for arrest warrants. A lot of us write our own search warrants here as well. So that's kind of nice, but no matter where you're at after the investigation, you move into the charging phase. And then that is where the whole investigation falls into the prosecutor's lap and they make a decision on charges. Now, at some smaller agencies, the patrol officer is doing everything. And I think I've definitely seen this in the comments. There's a misnomer out there that some of these smaller agencies, don't know what they're doing compared to the bigger agencies. I want to say that is definitely false. There are a lot of officers, and just by nature, that are really good at being police officers because they work at a smaller agency. So when they show up on a homicide, our officers, when they show up on a homicide, they're basically going to detain suspects if they're available, treat victims. Homicide, you're not going to treat a victim, but say it's an attempted homicide, they're going to treat victims if they see them and try to keep witnesses corralled and then hang tape and wait for detectives. At extremely small departments, they've got to do all that and go find the suspect and talk to the suspect and go get the evidence. There's no evidence team coming in collecting things. So a lot of the smaller agencies really are more well-versed than, say, a patrol officer at a larger agency. So to also cover some of the other more common questions, what's different about you? Obviously now I wear a tie, so this is my get-up. The detectives that we employ here at our agency, they're always in a suit and tie. Now, when they get called out, because they're on call 24/7, a lot of guys take call. When they get called out, they sometimes are in khakis and a polo. So that was my not so quick rundown of what a detective does or how they do it. This next portion, like I just mentioned, I'll kind of do a little bit of a narration of the different aspects of what I wear and the car I drive and our call out gear and things like that, and some of the more common equipment we use. So we'll jump into that right now because me talking is boring the crap out of me. All right, I'm going to warn you right now that the sound is going to really be bad. I'm not using my mic that I typically use. It's going to be run right off the camera. So if you can't hear well or there's a bad echo, I apologize. Just ask me in the comments below what you missed. So let's get started. So this is a much better visual shot of my office than I gave at the beginning of the video. I'll just kind of point out some areas here. So I'll just give you the full rundown. I don't know what it is you guys want to know and what you don't know. So I have a couple of windows here. Obviously those, they look like prison windows. They probably were at some point. So part of my administrative duties obviously is to hand out equipment and whatnot. I got some Glocks down there I still need to hand out. My computer area is right there. Sorry, my thumb work on this gimbal is really bad right now. So my challenge coin collection is right there. So every morning I come in, I apologize for the Hulk cup. That's my son's. I have stuff, unfortunately, that I take home from work with me. I really shouldn't, but I do that probably on a daily basis. So I just pack stuff in there. That's a, let's see, it's a 511 bag, by the way. Shout out to 511. Anyway, like I said in the video earlier, I keep my uniform stuff here. I'm probably vomiting your guts out with my gimbal work. But anyway, I keep all my uniforms there in case I need to change and get out on the road for any reason. Have my boots and stuff down there, some literature, whatnot, personal stuff up there, protein. I'm a dork. And then just pretty standard desk, nothing too fancy here. Now moving on, I'm not going to photograph everything. I just don't know what to photograph and what not, so it's going to be choppy. These are our interview rooms, and I'm not going to go in there just because I don't even want to deal with, you know, what I can and can't videotape. But just to let you know, we do have video rooms that are video recorded where we typically do our interviews of suspects, witnesses, and whatnot. So that's all recorded, so we're all kosher legally. Now back here again, I'm not going to photograph or video individual detectives' desks simply because I don't want to violate anybody's, you know, motivation to be on video or whatever. But this is kind of one of our main areas where detectives will work on cases and whatnot. So and this area is basically where they will start their day with cases. And you can see kind of a big conference table here. We do have regular meetings with different agencies and different government entities, or simply team meetings to talk about investigating cases. Yet again, I'm going to try to stay out of focus, but you wanted to get into police work, forms galore. This is where we keep all our forms for investigations. Those would be like consent forms and, you know, property forms, inventory, search warrant, inventory receipts, things like that. Obviously, you need a fridge to live throughout the day. So there we go. Now I'm going to blur a ton of this out. So yeah, you're not expected to see what's going on here, but this is what I was talking about physical case files and what we used to keep. So this particular investigator still has some physical case files that he's keeping. So that's what it used to look like, and this is pretty much now what it looks like for case files because they're all on the computer. This is nowhere near all of our equipment, but we do also have forensic equipment. And by forensic equipment, I just mean things that could get onto things that would get on technological devices. You know, you can rip phones, download through phones, get data off of phones that was deleted and whatnot. And we have, you know, investigators that are trained in that capacity as well. That, you know, even if you get a phone that's wiped, Android, iOS, it doesn't matter. Those guys are really good and they can still get data off those phones. So we do have some in-house equipment like that. Now this desk is currently not being utilized, so I can kind of show you that, but that would kind of be a bird's eye view of a detective's cubicle or a detective's desk. Now, I just want to show you some general items used during an investigation. So I have no idea what's going to show up on camera and what's not. I'm literally looking upside down here. So I'm going to try to blow through this as quick as I can in case none of this is in focus and all this footage is lost. So here's a currency bag. Now, unlike TV shows, you know, we don't just count it in our hands and put it in our pocket and whatnot. It's pretty thorough when we collect currency or large amounts of money. For us, it all goes in this bag. We write down how much is in there, and then it's checked by another officer and further checked down the line of the property room and whatnot. It never leaves this bag. It's a security seal on the bag, so this is a pretty thorough process for us. These are some evidence bags, so you place evidence in here that you locate on scene, and there's all types of things that you fill out on each piece of evidence, so it doesn't get it doesn't get misplaced, or chain of custody doesn't get messed up. And the reason these are paper bags is because they're breathable, so a lot of evidence needs to breathe still. So there's some evidence that you put in a sealed bag like this, and then there's some evidence that you put in a breathable bag like this. Biological specimens kit, you would use this stuff on rapes, or there's different kits as well. Like if you're getting DNA off of a suspect, you would use a different kit for that, but this is a specimen kit. I'm not going to open that up, but just letting you know. Everybody's aware of the opioid crisis and syringes and all the syringes we find on people, even meth now. So this is a syringe container. You throw the syringe in there so it can't pop through here and accidentally get someone. So syringe container. And every detective will tell you the most important tool they have, obviously, is the tape. So this seals up the packages, seals up evidence, all that stuff, and you can never have too much of this. Another thing I want to show you is, the difference between what you would do at a scene where you're just collecting evidence real quick and photographing it versus, kind of an intense forensic recovery. And this is by no means an intense forensic recovery, but I want to kind of demonstrate what I mean by that. So say this piece of evidence, my phone, we find it on scene or whatnot, and we need to take a picture of it. So you take a picture of it, that would be fine. That would suffice on, most misdemeanor investigations and whatnot. Something where that phone really isn't all that important, but you're going to take a picture of it just to document it was there. But this is just for demonstration purposes. So for like a forensic recovery, just kind of takes things one step further. It takes things into analytics or measurements or scientific data. Things like that can be backed up and proven by fact. So now the phone is to scale. This photograph would be to scale. There's verified measurements. This is if it got called into question, this is a roller, there's focus, made by Searchy, real popular evidence brand. The phone is now photographed and it's taken to scale. So there's no question in this photograph that the phone, is around 3 inches wide and right around 5 inches, 5.5 inches tall. Where it really does matter where that piece of evidence was, how big it was at the time you collected it, and the status of that piece of evidence at the scene of the recovery. I hope that makes sense. So some other things, there's my radio. I keep that on during the day while I'm sitting at my desk. That way I can hear any pertinent things that go out on patrol. Because no matter what job you do here, you do want to assist if something bad is happening. Let's swing around. Let me see if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this. A lot of people, the number one question, no matter how much you explain, forensics or long-term investigations, it's what type of gun are you wearing? I don't mind that question. That's fine. It's a solid question, but to answer it, it's a Glock 19. Tonight, I'm off duty, so I have my mags and all that put away already in my bag, but I do have a mag carrier, and I carry handcuffs as well. So this is my firearm. My badge, I don't know how good my blurring ability is going to be. It's not different for me as a supervisor, so mine will still just say, let me move that focus up. Mine will still just say like lieutenant on it, but for the detectives, there's actually says detective, and it has kind of a two-tone at our agency. Most agencies will have some type of distinguishing badge for the detectives that identifies them as a detective. And then also most agencies require their detectives that are in plain clothes to also show their badge so they can identify as a police officer. Just a real quick note here. Let me swing that around. Oh, I'm really bad at this. So, okay. So, this comes up still. I do try to cover my agency name, If you look for me or Google me, you'll find it in a heartbeat. So it's not necessarily I'm trying to hide where I work. It's just, you know, the agreement I have with my department. They've been awesome with me, and I don't want to mess any of that up. So as long as I make a solid effort to cover it, that's all I do. So if it happens to squeak by and you see it, don't worry. It's not like a huge deal. I do appreciate the comments and the feedback, but it's not like a big deal. I'm just making every effort I can to cover it if I can. But one thing I forgot to mention yesterday when I was shooting, and this video will be all chopped up, so yesterday might not mean anything to you, but what it usually requires to qualify to get transferred to a bureau or get promoted to a bureau position. So this is another one of those areas where you can't speak for every agency, but I can tell you most agencies and most investigators that I've worked with, you have to have a certain level of experience at least before you can even apply to be transferred to a investigative position. So, you know, that can be anywhere from 3 to 5 years. It could be 10 years. You know, some agencies only do it on seniority, meaning your only consideration for a detective bureau position would be how long you've been at the agency. So in some agencies, it could be 15 or 20 years that you have to have on. It just depends, and it all depends on the demographics of your area and the size of your agency and everything like that. Now, there's also advanced requirements for that, or potential advanced requirements. Some departments, although I disagree with this, require a bachelor's degree or some type of advanced education. And look, I've got my bachelor's degree. It's great, wonderful, but I don't know really how much that prepared me for law enforcement or anything like that. There's some nuances that you get from college education, not necessarily. Why is it every time I do a video in my car, there's like emergency vehicles every time? So hold on a second. All right, so what was I saying? Yeah, so I think that the experience of college prepared me a little bit for the bureau position, but I'm not all that sure that the actual education I received prepared me. And what I mean by that is getting up every day without your parents hanging over you, being responsible enough to study for things that are going to be important in your life, working while also trying to, you know, obtain an education that kind of teaches hard work. So, wow, thanks, bud. So I think those things are all important things that you learn from college, but I don't know so much about requiring it, because I know an awful lot of people that don't have a college education that just knock the socks off of being an investigator. So whatever. All right, everybody wants to see the car tour for some reason. That was popular, so this is my car here, and I'll probably pull it out to show you guys the nooks and crannies of it, but I gotta warn you, it is not very interesting. It's boring. I have a Caprice, Chevy Caprice, unmarked, although it does scream police vehicle. Nothing special here. This used to be a patrol vehicle. I'd always make fun of it, and now, shockingly, it's my vehicle, so I get to make fun of it all the time. And, oh, there's Levi. Say what's up, Levi.
What's up, Levi?
So this is an unmarked, although it, like I said, it screams police vehicle. Obviously, you have the spotlight on the outside, and listen, detective cars can be anything. They can look like a Honda Civic, or they can look like this. It might as well just be a patrol vehicle because it's pretty much outfitted like one. I do not have a cage in my car. So our primary function obviously is investigation. Not too many times are we going to have somebody in custody that we're transporting. We normally have transport units for that. So there's no cage in that. Now the inside of the vehicle, like I said, it's just like most patrol vehicles. I mean, they did rip part of the console out of this one because it is in the bureau unit fleet now. I have a, I don't know if this is going to show up. Let me adjust the brightness on this. All right, I'm trying to adjust the brightness. I'm almost up to ISO like 6,000 for those of you who know what that is. So this is going to be grainy. But I have my standard portable radio unit there. It's the same one that you carry around. There's not like a built-in radio in this car. No MDT, no functionality with that. No shotgun, no AR, nothing fun. Basically, it's just a normal car. There's nothing too exciting about this detective vehicle. I definitely could not do a detective vehicle tour video. Nobody would watch that. I will show you the light system because people seem to be into that. So lights on the vehicle, there's not a whole lot of times that a detective would be responding lights and sirens to anything. Really the only time that would be an officer in trouble call or something like that, or maybe to get past a traffic control device if somebody was running or whatnot and it was safe. So there's just not a lot of instances that we would use our lights, but they are on here. So there you have it. That is the Detective Bureau car. Couple things I wanted to wrap up. If you're still hanging in there, I want to throw a big shout up. I call it a shout up because his channel is much larger than mine. But if you're not following MikeyMo Vlogs already, you need to. This guy does a fantastic vlog on police work. He's down in Florida, and he is actually allowed to film on duty with the interactions with the public. So it's pretty amazing stuff, and I talk to him on the regular. I'm going to cut in here on the MikeyMo shout up. We are also planning to do a collaboration video, so what we need from you is comments or messages on what you'd like to see on that collaboration. Also, look forward to more great content. Sportsman Guide this week sent me the Glock 48. So I think it will be my next video, the review on this Glock 48. Also, like I said before, I've been in contact with some great companies. Galls has been awesome. Galls is a phenomenal company, and dealing with their people has been great. So they've sent me some equipment to review, and I'm really excited for those projects. I don't want to give a heads up on those projects though, because I have something really neat planned for that. So thank you, Sportsman Guide. Thank you, Galls. Look forward to next week's video on the gun. A lot of exciting stuff coming up. Look forward to seeing you guys soon. There we are. Ugh. Let me swing that around. Oh, I'm really bad at this. Doing forensic evidence. Doing forensic. I cannot talk. My challenge coin collection is right there. Even if patrol officers is barred, yeah. Not necessarily. Why is it every time I do a video in my car, there's like emergency vehicles every time? So hold on a second. All right, again with the emergency siren. There's nothing too exciting about this detective vehicle. I definitely could not do a detective vehicle tour video. Nobody would watch that.